Hi everyone, I'm Chrissy St. Massey from Only Human, and I'm joined today by some thought leaders in education from all over the US who are really working in education to light the way for our youth and future generations of good humans. So if you know anything about Only Human, you know that every month we partner with a different nonprofit and we focus on a topic that impacts a large portion of humanity. In August, we are focusing on education. We actually picked out this topic well in advance, well before COVID, well before the kind of realization that a lot of systems in our country are struggling, have gaps and massive opportunities for overhauling and improving and changing so that humanity can move forward in the right ways. So as part of our Lighting the Way campaign, we're partnered with Tricia Halsey from the Big Idea Project. And we're bringing in various partners like Josh Knutson and Jake Gannon from Rhythm App, Andrew Collins from Acton Academy, and Phoenix Modern to really just share perspectives, share their knowledge and expertise on the topic of education and how we can all come together to, I think, be part of a shift that's happening whether we like it or not. So today, over the next hour, we will dive deep into some questions around education and humanity at large and our role and responsibility as individuals, as parents, as educators, as humans that may not have any kids at all, in shifting how our youth, how young humans grow into future leaders. So with that said, I would like to take a few minutes for each of our amazing panelists to just introduce themselves and tell us a bit about who they are, what they do, and why they are here. And I will start with Tricia from the Big Idea Project.
Hi guys, I'm the founder. My name is Tricia Halsey. I'm the founder and executive director for Big Idea Project. We're a nonprofit that functions in the education space here in Denver, Colorado. Our mission is to unleash the potential of students. And in order to do that, we go into schools and we provide a full standalone class that is integrated into district curriculum, kind of like IB or AP, where kids go through this experiential learning where they become better versions of themselves. They learn leadership, social emotional learning, workforce readiness, and well-being, which includes mental health.
And next we have Andrew Collins. Go ahead and tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, great. So co-founder and CEO of a nonprofit in Arizona called New Learning Ventures. And we are currently supporting two communities of heroic learners, one in a micro independent setting of heroic learners coming together to really support each other on their learners' journey. That's called Acton Academy Phoenix, and part of a global network of Acton Academies. We also operate a public school called Phoenix Modern, which takes a whole child approach with a diverse set of families in a non-selective manner to support them through exploration and creativity on a journey to ultimately be prepared for a world of possibilities. Between those two communities, we're supporting learners and their families on this journey to discover and be curious and ultimately learn how to shoulder the responsibility for their own learning. And with all of that, be a catalyst for broader change across Arizona, showcasing the power and the genius of learners when adults are able to step back and act as guides and mentors along the way in their own personal journey.
Love it. And Josh, Jake, I don't know which one of you wants to go first. We'll go ahead with Josh.
Yeah, let the CEO go first, please.
Sounds good. Hey, everybody. Yeah, my name's Josh. I am the CEO and co-founder, along with Jake, of a company called Rhythm. We're a social emotional learning and really just kind of truthfully, what we like to call just the human being application that works inside of education. My background is a clinical one. So I was a marriage and family therapist in California. I have a clinical master's degree from Boston University. So I worked in clinical practice for several years. And I think there was this whole life journey that I went down to get to where to sort of in this entrepreneurial space now. But the thing that I think is most relevant for this conversation that I learned was that, there was a lot of potential in education to focus on some of this human being stuff, right? And people were doing it, and I saw it happening. But what I didn't see is it happening at any scale, and what I didn't see is it happening with any speed. It was a process that was coming to the surface, but wasn't moving nearly as quickly as I felt it needed to, or that it could. And so I said, okay, let's leave this career behind and let's go see if we can figure out how to make a larger impact. And so I did. I came back here to the Dallas-Fort Worth area and just set out not really knowing what was going to happen. My wife and I started a small child development center. We taught social emotional learning to 1 to 4 year olds. And we were running that for a couple of years. And I was in the back office just hammering out ideas and trying to think what's the big plan. And ran into my partner Jake here at our what was sort of a hodgepodge 10-year high school reunion of sorts. And Jake said, man, these are some pretty good ideas. If no one's doing this, we should go. We should try this. And so we did, and this is where we are now. We just passed a little over 300,000 users this month. We're looking at potentially 500,000 on this thing in the next few months. And I think really the purpose, the goal of what we're trying to do is, again, to say, if anyone's familiar with CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning, they did a survey called The Missing Piece, and where they said they found that 98% of the principals across the country and public K-12 education said they believed social emotional learning and mental health programs would be of value to their students. But only 36% of those same people reported they had a comprehensive school-wide program going on. And so that's what Jake and I said. We said, wow, let's build something that dramatically simplifies that so we can get this stuff in there. Let's turn these 10-year plans into a 1-month plan and get every student every day doing something. And so that's the idea, is to work within the context of K-12 education as it currently stands in a scalable way. So I'll toss it to Jake to keep rocking on that.
As I like to say, Josh is the brain and I'm the body. So mine's going to be a little bit shorter than Josh's. He covered a ton of great stuff there. I will say that Josh and I have been friends since we're 12 years old. So we go way back, and our passion for what we like to say is solving the human excellence problem is something we've experienced since we were teenagers. So Rhithm itself is a wellness check-in tool. Students and teachers take a really brief 5-question emoji assessment. Based on those assessment answers, our algorithm launches the ideal 1 to 2 minute SEL activity video. So we like to say it's activities, check-ins, and data that has never existed before within the education space. So these dashboards are available for campus, district, and state level to review and reflect and connect with. So we've been really blessed to launch our application in January and be where we're at now. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. Thanks for having us, Chrissy.
Absolutely. Thanks to all of you for being here. I'll just chime in a little bit about myself, just because I love the humanization aspect of, people participating in this thing. So I have a 2.5-year-old. I have always had a wicked curiosity for learning and growth and human development, and it's a core of Only Human. And we're just so grateful to have you all who are thinkers, and not only thinkers, but doers in the education space. People who are, creating new ways of learning, whether it's through tech or going into schools or creating even a new model of a school. So we're really grateful to have you here, and I'm so looking forward to diving into these questions. So I'm going to kick it off. So the first question we have here, and feel free to just jump in if it's really something that's resonating with you. And if there's any kind of pause at all, I'm just going to voluntold someone, I guess. So the first question here is, prior to the pandemic, if you were to ask humans about the state of education, the majority would have said that the education system is in need of major change. Now, parents and neighbors are more aware than ever that of the far-reaching effect of education on us all, and as it currently stands, it's not working. What is the pandemic season revealing about the state of education? Who's feeling a pull on that one?
I'll say something on this first. What our offering was a nice to have in January, a check-in tool that allowed educators and admins to check in on their students' mental well-being. And what we have learned is that we have seen the biggest positive shift we've seen is the awareness and need towards student and staff well-being and needing to know that information and having data on that. I'll tell you this, that SEL was something that was kind of crawling along, I would say, throughout education. And positively, I have seen the need for that explode and the reality of the need for that explode. I think that Andrew could probably touch on that as well, especially with the whole child piece. Like, that was something that people talked about and maybe 20% of educators really bought into. And what we're seeing now is probably 50 to 60% of educators come to us prepared to have those conversations and are looking for those types of solutions. So yeah, that's my piece.
I could add something to that. So the question is, what is this pandemic season teaching us and showing us about how education needs to, what's it revealing about the state of education? And so if you haven't noticed yet, education is a system of systems. It touches every other social system. Students or people, young people start there. Other than family, education is where they're formed, and it touches business, it touches healthcare, it touches government, every other media, it's education. And we're seeing a lot of, even just in businesses, now with all of the students, I mean, there's 40% are saying that they might possibly homeschool this year. So businesses are starting to go, wait a minute, what am I going to do with employees who are going to stay home and homeschool? So that's just one example. But I think the biggest thing for me is I was listening to parents of kids who were thrown into remote learning last semester. And they were making jokes about drinking wine all the time and trying to entertain their way out of it because it was so hard. And I think what was starting to bubble to the surface were these questions like, why does my child not like learning? Why do they have to do worksheets all of the time? And I have to force them to sit in their seats, and why are they not curious? And so I think one of the biggest, I mean, there's so many things that this season has revealed, but I think one of the bigger ones, and I'm hoping continues, is that parents and then of course those who are, businesses and so forth, but mostly parents, their families, they're starting to ask different questions, starting to reevaluate what the purpose of education is. And I think that's the right place to begin.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that because I know we'll probably get into this. What is the purpose of education? And I think that this pandemic is really challenging this idea that there's a need for an institution that owns learning. At the end of the day, this is about learning. And I think that more and more families are realizing it now, and more are going to realize it in the coming months, that our education system, our system of systems, or a system of public schools, was designed in a very different era. And it was designed in an industrial era that created a factory model because we were creating factory workers. Enter age 5, go through a linear progression year over year with a standard set of inputs, hopefully with the outputs being the same. Our world is totally different. And if the last 4 months haven't shown that, people are going to realize that even more in the next few months, that our world is rapidly changing and it's complex. And a singular standardized output for children is not what we want. And parents have realized that when that factory closed down in March, they said, wait, does that mean learning stops? And there was this false idea that it did because the school closed. Well, the reality is, as humans, we've been learning since birth. I have an 8-month-old and I have a 3.5-year-old. and they're learning every single day by their own curiosity, exploring, touching, feeling, asking questions. And there are some families that in March who had that mindset, let their children go. And at Acton, our children were already used to shouldering the responsibility for their own learning. And without a hitch, we're able to continue on that path. Well, unfortunately, some parents have realized that the learning experience for them meant following directions from a singular adult. And as soon as that learner no longer had that singular adult in front of them, they didn't know what to do. And so parents are now starting to question, gosh, is this actually preparing our learners to be self-driven and be able to learn for their entire life? And when we look at the entrepreneurs and innovators in our economy that have been able to adapt and learn and unlearn and then learn something new, they're thriving. And the ones that are waiting for someone to tell them what to do are not thriving. And so there's this greater realization from many families, from parents, and ultimately from learners who are saying, hey, learning is way more than just going to a school and completing assignments. My passions, my interests, what I choose to do matters. And it's on my own journey. At Acton, we call it a hero's journey, where I'm leaving my comfort zone and I'm stepping into a special world where it's going to be challenging. There's going to be hardships. You're going to need friends and allies along the way. But ultimately, the treasure when you go through that journey is so much greater. And I think many learners who are embracing that and families that are embracing that are seeing the power and are never going to go back to the traditional model of learning. And I think there are other families that are still wondering what they're going to do next.
All of you have made such wonderful points on this topic. I mean, as a personal narrative share here, just real quickly, I was talking with a colleague earlier before this about my own educational journey, right? Like going through high school and retaining very little and learning very little real life skills that I would apply. You know, I graduated from high school and I continued on through college, but it wasn't until my early adulthood and after college that I really trusted in my own curiosity and my own free will to be able to explore the stuff that I really was passionate about and to learn, you know, finances and how to manage credit and real life stuff that just isn't taught in schools, including my own mental health and, you know, the full spectrum of my existence as a human. So you all are, I mean, this is incredible and I love this. I want to keep it going. I am going to make a note here. So Tricia recently launched a solo episode on her podcast, Your Role in Shaping Our Nation's Future Through the System of Systems Education. And there was a nugget in there that just hasn't left me all day because I listened to it this morning, and it had to do with how the traditional system of learning is all about just stacking information, but it's not about wisdom, and wisdom is really what, you know, helps humans evolve and become their true selves. And I know she could say it a million times better. We've dropped some links in the comments for those who are watching to really just dive a bit deeper into all of our panelists, their organizations, and some of their shares on education, including that podcast. So the next question I want to dive into, sometimes we just go through the motions and do what we are told is best. But if we take a step back and change our perspective, maybe we ought to start re-asking ourselves the question, what is the purpose of education? I know, Andrew, you started touching on this. But if you re-asked yourself, what is the purpose of education? What would you say? What would your response be?
I'm sure we could all jump in on this one. I'll start and get my 2 cents out of the way, and I know you guys will elaborate. So I think all of us are parents, and it's very personal, this question as a parent. I also study economics. As an economist, as a person who thinks about the macro world, this is an important question too. And I think we have to get rid of this idea of what is the purpose of education and get back to the human and say, what are we endeavoring as a society? what type of community do we want? What skills, mindsets, habits, and how do we interact with each other as a community? And if we ask those questions, then when the second question would be, what type of experiences might we facilitate to help grow human beings? And there, we then can question school. What's the purpose of school? Is there a better mechanism? And it's always about the human experience. What opportunities do children get to experience throughout their lifetime to develop into the type of human beings that we want to live and work with, right? So that they are able to add value, they're kind, they know how to be creative and collaborate with others and think critically and be problem solvers, engage in argument in respectful ways. And so what type of experiences that collectively would make their education such that the world is better tomorrow than it is today because of the human beings that are fueling the world.
I would add, that's awesome. I love your answer, Andrew. I would just, I mean, I don't have much to add. That was great. But one thing is just, I believe, here's my personal belief, and I know many others agree, that every person is born with something. They have potential in them, and potential is a mix of talents and gifts and passions, and certainly, you know, your personality. It's a mix of who are you. Mm-hmm. And I think the purpose of school education, I mean, it's really, we're forming, like Andrew said, a person. The person is going through the most formative years of their life. And ultimately, and when I look at my children, I'm asking the question, do you know who you are? Who are you? And do you know what you're good at? Do you know what your preferences are? And then in addition to that, do you know what you want to do? Because I believe that every person within those talents and those skills, they're compelled to do something. And I think as education in school, as it stands right now, it's like we think we have to externally form them. And that is not what we're supposed to do. We are supposed to pull out of them what is already inside. And there is no opportunity, or there's very, very few opportunities. We are in the public school sector, and the kids feel like, it's zombies walking down halls in the middle schools, high schools. I'm mostly in high schools. And they feel dead to the world. They're unseen. And we have kids who say, I'm so busy being somebody to every different person out there, I don't even know who I am. And in Colorado, we're having a suicide epidemic because the kids just feel like they're only worth their score on their test, and they can't please everybody. They can't live up to the expectations, and they have no concepts that they are worthy and that their life has purpose. So I think fundamentally, I say it's to the parents, that's the greatest treasure hunt you can go on with your kids, is to help them find out who they are and what they're meant to do. And that's really the role of teachers too, in broadening that curiosity and so forth. I'll stop now.
Yeah.
No, I think it's wonderful. I mean, really thinking about education should be the mechanism of what we're pulling out of our youth as individuals, and not this external, like Andrew mentioned, system that was born out of the Industrial Revolution, right? This should be a living, dynamic, breathing, and also ever-changing mechanism of helping humans understand who they are. Yeah. And what kind of legacy they want to build, what they want to accomplish in this lifetime. What you were saying, Tricia, actually, it just made me think of the Rhithm App and Jake and Josh, with the mental health in Colorado that Tricia mentioned, the rates rising so rapidly, and how Rhithm, has an assessment tool and uses SEL tracking and monitoring to assist teachers and educators in kind of getting hopefully more of a full spectrum reading on how their students are doing. Do you want to expand on that at all and kind of tie that into the conversation?
Yeah, I'll definitely jump in here. I think that there have been some really phenomenal answers here. Andrew, in particular, the meta thing you just did there, you sort of panned out. The question was, what's the purpose of education? Let me take it even up an extra layer. What's the purpose of our society? What we're doing with human beings? I loved it. I'll tell you this. This is kind of. I struggle with exactly how to answer the question, because to be honest, I think what personally for me, where I've kind of been at recently in the last few years, and I think Jake and I have been in a similar position, is that we sort of stopped asking those questions for a little bit, and really stopped sort of spending, like, I used to just sit and think and like talk about it all the time. And I basically said, hey, okay, I don't know that I can necessarily convince education, this massive system, to believe what we're saying here. So I think I sort of shifted to, what do we do about it? If I know that it is, we're absolutely right, it is about building self-awareness. It is about who are you. It is about allowing potential to flourish, right? These things are absolutely true. It's also, learning is experiential. It's not just knowledge, right? Your body and your mind are not just the frontal cortex. That's not just the part that thinks, right? You are so much more than that. You are an experiencing being. And so education must be experiential. Mm-hmm. What I guess the sort of working model that I got to is, all right, I sort of give up on convincing them. Let me just figure out a way to sneak it in there a little bit in some sense, right? And not necessarily sneak it, but to sort of get it, to build it into the system, rather than trying to break the system down and change it. Let's work within that system and sort of feed something up through it. And really, that's what the Rhithm App is all about. And so Jake mentioned a little bit about, it is assessment and activity. So the students kind of take that check-in, and then we immediately right there in the moment launch these, 1 to 2, maybe 3-minute max video activities in the moment. And that's what they're all about. They are experiential. Every single activity we do involves breathing, whether it begins with a breath and it ends with a breath. Every single activity or lesson we drop in there is about awareness, not just self-awareness, but just generally awareness, right? Every activity ends with 5 to 7 seconds to just, hey, notice what you notice about what just happened. The check-in itself is about building self-awareness, right? It creates this daily routine, this habit. It's simple enough. That's why we call it rhythm, by the way. It's meant to be a routine or habit, simple enough you can do it every day and get yourself into a rhythm. We create this simple routine where we can actually pull off all the things you guys are absolutely so right about. We can stick it into this, frankly, sort of broken system and allow some of this to come in. And it's these little, micro doses of it, right? But over time, the cumulative effect, that's what we're going for. So, Chrissy, I think you just made a perfect segue, because I was just like, man, you guys are so right. This is exactly what we built this tool for, man.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I love the answers, and I think what we're trying to do is to make those things a reality. I will say this, one final thing before I want to toss it to Andrew. He looks like he's got some good stuff to say there. Don't get me wrong. We still need the thinkers and the people trying to shift the larger system overall. That we have to be working top down and bottom up together, right? I can't just say, yeah, none of it's worth it. We got to do it from both sides, absolutely. So yeah, I'll toss it.
No, Josh, I was just gonna just kind of connect to what you're doing, because it's interesting, this conversation around technology, and we're on a panel supported by Only Human, right? And so where do those two pieces fit together? And your technology is inherently getting at the core of a human, which you say, like self-awareness and ultimately self-regulation. So in our school, we think about technology as a tool. It's incredible the technology that exists today that frees people up to do really incredible things, but ultimately it's a tool for helping them grow. And going back to our first question is, what are families, what are learners, what are parents realizing in this time? They're realizing how important social and emotional well-being of humans are. And that when they weren't in a school setting, which in many cases was the safest and most social aspect of their life, when you took them away from that, all of a sudden there was a ton of struggle. And as Tricia was saying, suicide rates going up. And so this necessity of understanding self and building self-regulation skills, and even social awareness, so understanding other people's current state of being and how you might interact with them, have empathy with them, be able to build skills with them, is incredibly important. And educators knew this, but many people didn't realize that educators knew this, that the school played an incredibly important role for that. Now, oftentimes, there wasn't allowed space to do that. And I think that's one of the realizations, hopefully, coming out of this season, is that the experience that learners have with each other and with the adults that truly care for them, the time that we spend on building their self-awareness, their self-regulation, their social awareness, their relationship skills, is equally, if not more important than them growing as mathematicians and readers and writers and communicators and storytellers, which as soon as you start to say those words, we know how connected that is. Understanding yourself and the world is ultimately about storytelling. And Josh, what I was gonna say is it sounds like your app is an incredible tool to help build the skills for a learner and a community to understand themselves on a daily basis, even maybe by the hour, and then building the equipping to then, how do I respond to that? And maybe they need the technology up front, and then eventually they're like, hey, I can actually do this on my own, and I'm a much more stable person that can command my own attention, that can regulate my emotions, because we all know as humans, we have lots of different emotions, right? And so the ability to regulate and interact with each other and be aware and have empathy with other learners, say, oh, I experienced that yesterday. Let me help you, right? So I think it's awesome. The technology is just only adding to what is at the core of what we need to grow in as humans.
Absolutely. And the technology is not going anywhere, right? I mean, I think even more so with the pandemic, people who possibly weren't even as receptive and open to utilizing technology as tools for human development and learning and connection and communication are being forced to in ways that they haven't before, and are finally starting to realize, like, okay, if this is the way society is going, I need to probably plug in a bit and utilize this in the right way. Which brings me to my next question. I don't know what it's been like at each of your households with, remote learning and back to school or back to Zoom or whatever model of education you're finding yourselves in with your family. But parents with school-age children, they're faced with scenarios this year that are very challenging, more so than ever before, to say the least. What would you say to parents who are trying to navigate the current changes in the current climate of education and remote learning, homeschooling, or hybrid, or some variation?
I would say, don't give up and keep the faith. I'm telling you guys, we also assess teachers who are parents, now teaching from home virtually. And I mean, a lot of parents are struggling right now. We've had adults express suicidal ideation through our app just due to the challenges that they're seeing in this new environment. So don't give up. It's darkest right before dawn. So many people feel helpless, and you may be in this time, but it will get better. Don't give up.
Yeah. I would say that this is a time where if you're trying to, at home, replicate this a traditional industrial era model of school, and you feel like the pressure's on you as a parent to guide it all and say you got to do this, and they're not doing it, you get frustrated. Throw that out the window. Stop doing that. Love your kids. Pour into them. This is a time where focusing on relationships as a family and connecting to the human in terms of their interests. What are they curious about? Engaging them in work that's going around the house, engaging them in your own work, letting them ask questions. Don't feel like you have to have all the answers to their questions. Just follow up with perhaps another question. I think there's a lot of pressure that parents feel that says, oh, my kid's going to be left behind. They're not going to be able to, be on track. That's only because we've been ingrained with this idea that there's a very specific pace of learning that has to happen, and what specifically they have to learn at a particular pace. What if we allow learners to be able to explore the things that they're interested in? We ask them questions. We engage them in our own work. So if you have a middle school or a high school age child at home, let them into your world of work, or your world of managing the home, or engaging in big philosophical questions together. Watch videos together, ask questions together. Spend some time on the relationship and the curiosity. When you do that, you might see a new spark for learning. Just reading books and loving books of their own choice develops them into a person who loves stories and literature, and allows them to exponentially grow their reading because they're interested in reading. And the more they read, the better they get at it. So stop. In other words, give yourself a break, give yourself some grace, enjoy your time with your family, and stop putting so much pressure on yourself to fit into a standard pace mode of schooling, and let your kids explore.
Yeah, I would, just ask yourself, what is success look for your student or your child? What does it look like for them to be successful? And I know so I've been calling this whole COVID pandemic thing, like many people, I suppose, the Great Reset. And I think the people in this that are seeing the most opportunity for change, really, I mean, the system anyway, other than education, is the family, because everyone's back in and they have time again. I mean, people aren't commuting to work, and so we can choose to be, or put our kids on Netflix all day and kind of just wait for it to be over, or we can take advantage of this opportunity. And I think that it's an unprecedented opportunity as a parent to take advantage of this time. We've been given, I believe that we're going to see more school closures, and it's going to be a chaotic year. And so this is an opportunity to take this year even, I mean, look at it the next 6 months, whatever, but to really hone in on, like what Andrew was saying, just the foundational skills. For example, my oldest son is a 6th grader, and they say for every year in traditional school, which he's in traditional public school, it takes a month to unschool them, so they're unthinking, thinking the right way. And I'm telling you, he has a fear of failure like you wouldn't believe. And I know this stuff, and I've been raised him, but it's because he's been in the environment for 8 hours, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. And it becomes this, he gets so debilitated almost because he's afraid of letting people down if he doesn't get the right, because there's only one answer in his mind. And so we're taking this opportunity to unschool him. And actually, to let you in on a secret of our family, we're going to homeschool, which is crazy because I don't have the time, our family did, but we do. We can figure this out. And so what does it look like? You want to learn sign language? You want to learn engineering? You want to read Shakespeare? Sure, let's do that. Let's explore it. I had them do an essay or a report on the effects of screen time and being in front of technology all of the time. And they're going to present that. And so they can actually make decisions for themselves that are healthy, and getting them to think on their own, and having Socratics over lunch and dinner together, Socratic discussions where we're thinking of deeply, how are you thinking about your thinking? It's an opportunity for parents to just really take a hold and unschool. And what if schools do open, but I don't think they will open as they were. I don't think we are going back to that kind of normal, but when they do reopen again, and if kids go back after a year of unschooling, I wonder how the conversations would sound. I wonder how the teachers might be able to ask different kinds of questions, and perhaps kids will keep one another accountable instead of grades. I think this is a key opportunity to shape a major part of our society.
I think you make such a solid point real fast, Tricia, because it's easy and it's most accessible, right, to go into the systems that are set up for education. And I think, I don't know, I've spoken to a lot of other parents who they secretly have been waiting for something like this, like we've needed permission to allow our children and our families to exist in this way. And somehow now, you know, those who have been waiting are harnessing it. For others, it's becoming a lot more difficult. But Tricia, to your point, I wonder what it will be like for those that have this period of experimenting with learning and growing in these ways, what it's going to be like when schools do reopen. And you have teachers who know there's maybe an alternative out there, and you have parents who definitely know that there's a different way of doing things, and you have kids who have had a taste of that and maybe want more of that. And I wonder if when we do try going back into these old systems, if there's going to be kind of a revolution, like people are going to revolt because they're going to have really experienced a different way. But Josh, I know you were going to say something, so please jump onto that.
Well, Chrissy, I'm glad that you just said that, because I think it was a phenomenal point, honestly. I mean, that is the hope. I mean, yeah, that you can't, you know, once you go this way, you can't go back. And if you get stuck back into that system and they're telling you to go back, you're like, wait, what? No, I don't think I'm going back, you know? And so absolutely, you know, there's a great book out there, if anyone's heard of it. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. Jake and I have been reading it together. But the idea is generally that these challenges that we are faced with are oftentimes opportunities in disguise, right? And I think I've felt this way for a little bit, that this is, you know, the Great Reset, right? This is an opportunity more than anything else. And I think, Chrissy, you just made a great point with that. Yeah. I also want to say a couple of other pieces. One, I have to talk to Matt real quick, if he's still here, teaching kids that their phone is a tool, not just a social device. Amen. If you can't beat them, join them. That is exactly what Rhithm is all about. This device can be a tool for good. So I just had to comment on that real quick. I love that comment. But I think, you know, to Tricia and Chrissy's points, you know, this is, you know, the question before this was, what is the purpose of education? And a parent could have asked that question of themselves a year ago. And to be frank, it wouldn't have mattered because they couldn't have done anything to change it anyway. Right now is the opportunity to legitimately be able to ask that question and have it actually matter to ask that question, right? This is the opportunity to say, what is the purpose of education for me, for my child? What is this really about, right? To reevaluate things. We've never had the opportunity for that question to mean something until right now, which I think is huge. And I think the biggest takeaway from this. However, in the interest of what I said earlier and what, you know, the Rhithm App is all about, which is to act on top of thinking and considering these things, to do something about it. I want to offer one thing for teachers, teachers and parents out there that are at home, because all this is well and good, but as you all know, I mean, I only have a 1-year-old and I'm learning this, right? Things get crazy around the house. And if you've got multiple kids, you're trying to homeschool, it's a lot. And so, you know, there is this sort of nice thought around, you know, the opportunity. And then there is sometimes the on the ground reality that it's really hard to even think about some of that stuff, because I've got to clean the house and do the dishes and change the litter box and this. And I got to teach kids. So I want to offer just one little tool that I think is, you know, our application, all these activities are just, they're 1-2 minutes. And I think you can do a lot in a really little amount of time. So the broad thing I would say is that it is important to take care of yourself first. You know, this is sort of almost proverbial at this point. People talk about this all the time, right? You can't drink from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself if you're going to be able to actually take advantage of this opportunity to ask this question. And so a tool I think that is particularly useful, we call this a glimpse practice. It's just a glimpse, but when you find these little glimpses, these little moments of peace, I think they can be really powerful even if they're quick. So the practice goes like this. You stop for just a moment and ask yourself a hypothetical question. And that question is, if there is no problem to solve right now. Now, maybe there are 1,000 problems in your head, but just for hypothetical purpose, for this very moment, just ask yourself, if there isn't an actual problem to solve, if there's nothing to do or solve right now, let's pretend that, what is here? And then just stop and look around for a second. If there is no problem to solve, what is here? And oftentimes what you will find is that in almost every given moment of your life, there is actually no problem to solve in that very particular tiny moment, that present moment that you're in. And when you notice that the thing that you're left with is just a room that's fairly relaxed and, you know, some sounds and stuff, right? There's a little tiny moment of peace right there. And if you just take that every once in a while, remind yourself, hey, okay, I know there's problems to solve, but hey, let's hypothetically, if there isn't, what's here right now? Oh, just my son running around, right? That's pretty cool. There's these little moments of peace that you can find. It's important to take care of yourself. And just a little glimpse of peace can go a long way. So that's my one piece of advice for parents out there.
I love that. And I think it's so needed right now. You know, mental health struggles are just on the rise with the lack of human connection, isolation, distancing from family members and our support systems as humans. And you're right that so many times I find myself solving problems that are future problems that don't actually exist in the moment. And I know in the chaos of being a parent, someone who's doing their job, just an individual, there's a lot of chaos and there are a lot of fires that you might feel like you need to put out, but it's a good reminder to just kind of touch in and be in that now. I appreciate you bringing that perspective into this. So we have one more question and then we're going to close it up. Many humans aren't parents or have children who are not yet ready for K through 12 school. Why should they care about education? Why is this an issue that's relevant and critical for humanity at large? Let's take kind of a step back, a bird's eye view, and really talk about, why this is everyone's issue. This is something everyone should be thinking about.
I'll go back to what I said before in that as humans, we, for the history of humans, have lived in community. And societies that have excelled have been ones that have been able to cooperate the best, have been able to live in a society with the best type of interaction that is coordinated, that is able to support one another towards bigger goals beyond just the individual self. And so when we think about this, the growth of our society, the growth of human beings, and we go back to the question around education and the development of humans, the development of who they are, what value they add, how they interact with each other, the skills as innovators and as change makers and as peacekeepers, that affects all of us. So we have this false idea that education is merely a path towards a job. Start at age 5, go through all these skills, finish high school, go to college, get some sort of degree, then there's a job waiting for you, you make money, and then you raise kids to do that path. That's not true. There's a whole world of opportunity to develop skills and learn how to add value and contribute to society. And ultimately, all of us are going to contribute in unique ways to make the community better. And so it's not about education. It's not about a pathway to a job. Everything is about how does our society progress? How do we live, even now, today, in present time, we live in peace and productive struggle with each other such that those problems that exist can be solved cooperatively, but we can also have contentment and understanding as a community that everyone is valuable and everyone brings something to the table. And so those experiences all together to develop that impacts all of us. It's not if you just have a kid, it's not just if you're a parent, because we all live together. And as human race, as we're coming together as a community, each one of us contributes to the other in unique ways. And so the way that we invest in and pour into the development of humans collectively makes our community better.
Yeah, I would go back to what saying the system of systems. Like that's why it touches. I mean, these become adults who go into every part of society, and we have to. This is a topic that I'm so passionate about. I can even I could scream. Actually, we all have to care about education. It's really easy to abdicate our responsibility to the professionals and the experts, and we're told, and we were told that the professionals and experts are the ones who are in education. That is their profession. It's the teachers, but yes, they're the experts, but it doesn't mean that we abdicate our responsibility. We all have a responsibility for raising up the next generation. And there's a quote by Chesterton. I wrote it down over here so I wouldn't forget it, but it was, the education is simply the soul of a society as it passes from one generation to the next. And if we are not careful and thoughtful and intentional with what we're doing in the formation of our kids and our teens and our young adults as they go out into life, then what are we transferring? What is the future going to look like for them? And it's this idea that we are all a part of something bigger than us. We all contribute to this bigger narrative. And I do a lot on generous leadership and leadership development with the kids and with others. And the mark of a leader is raising up leaders. And if you want to be a leader who has a true legacy, then you raise up someone to be better than you. And your legacy lives on in them. And that's the transferring of a soul to the next generation who comes after you. And now you're part of a narrative that is so much bigger. So this is everybody's responsibility. It means if you know engineering, you can go apprentice the kid next door who wants to learn how to build something. If a single mom next door who's struggling, you see her struggling, ask if you can read to her kids. If you see some teenagers playing in the park, start talking to them and asking about them, what they're learning, what they're curious about, what they want to do with their lives. If we start showing that we care, and we start exemplifying kindness and the values that we want to transfer, we be intentional with that and not just abdicating our responsibility. That's the only way that we're going to transfer a soul that we're proud of. And we're going to be a part of our legacy. We're going to be proud of the legacy that we leave and the ones after us.
Yeah. Man, these answers are so good. I'm almost hesitant to say anything because I want to leave it on them. But I think, Tricia, you're so right that education is of just paramount importance. I would venture to argue that almost every problem that we see as a global society right now, our ability to be hijacked by computers and strange information floating around everywhere, whatever it is, I would venture to say that almost every problem that we're seeing right now is a manifestation of our of education, and really the focus of our education being less than optimal, shall we say? Right? We have an opportunity here to make a huge difference in this space. This is the thing that touches every single human being that lives. To be honest, I mean, it touches every single human being that lives, and the focus has been on passing a standardized test, and that's just that's going to manifest itself in a lot of ways. And I think you guys, everyone's making just phenomenal points. That this is one of the, if not the most central thing to pay attention to and to do something about. So I would strongly agree.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew, you got something.
No, I'm just going to echo. I mean, everybody has something to add to the development of our society. I mean, the last 4 months have been cool to see artists, celebrities, engineers, chefs. I mean, so many people through the power of the internet have come together and say, hey, I have something to offer kids and I'll offer it for free. I mean, there's been so many wonderful experiences, virtual field trips, museums opening up to even more accessible to learners that haven't. We have parents that are all offering their own unique skills to run a workshop or a club. And so collectively, we have a lot of talent in our world. And when we all come together to pour into, whether it's our current generations or next generations, adults, children, along this ongoing continuum of growth and learning. And ultimately, as a society, if we can form kind people that have a growth mindset, then good, right? Like if we know how to be kind to each other and we see ourselves as consistent and continual learners, that know how to ask good questions and know how to listen to other people when they're answering that question, and then be able to share our own thoughts on that respectfully, then all of those problems that you described, Josh, I think can be solved, because humans are incredible, are very incredible, and they're geniuses. We all have things to add to make our world better.
Limitless capacity, Andrew. That's what we have. I don't really have anything to say outside of thank you, Chrissy, for having us. There's no way I can top anything the three of you guys just said. So thank y'all so much for inviting us. Only Human. We're really grateful to be on this tonight. Thank you.
This honestly is I think a gift to us and everyone watching. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives, for taking your time and spending it with us in this way. I mean, everything about why Only Human exists has been touched on in some way or another in this conversation. We're going through a hard time. We're going to overcome that through the power of togetherness and human connection that's evolving in different ways. And we all do influence one another, and we all do have the capacity to move humanity forward if we take the time to really harness this opportunity that's in front of us in the right ways, and continue to inspire one another to grow and think out of the box and change systems that just aren't working. So thank you all for being here. I do want to take just a quick minute for each of you, if you have any final words or want to add anything that's coming up in your world that people can be a part of or can get involved in. Again, we've dropped links to all of your organizations in the chat, and hopefully those who are watching this will see that. But please, Andrew, why don't you start? What can people do to follow along with your journey at Acton and Phoenix Modern?
Yeah, I first want to make a comment that hopefully gives some inspiration, and then kind of a practical structure that people could follow, and then I'll share how you might learn more about our learning communities. But the first is, do we fundamentally believe that children are geniuses? Not that they can be geniuses, but they actually today are geniuses in their own unique ways. And if we believe that, then how might we get out of their way? How might we get out of their way to allow them to flourish? Flourishing and motivation requires autonomy. It requires a sense of purpose, and it requires a self-driven path towards mastery. We know autonomy, mastery, and purpose are incredibly important for the individual's journey. And so I'm going to challenge everybody, whether you're a parent, you're an educator, to flip the way we've done education in the past on its head, which we've done at Acton Academy and at Phoenix Modern, and we put the children in the driver's seat. We let them shoulder the responsibility for learning, because Maria Montessori said, don't do for a child what he or she can do for herself. And believe me, they're incredible. They can do a lot of things. We just need to get out of their way. Now, they need a few things. So here's 5 things that as a parent, you can think about as a structure, and we follow this in our learning communities at Acton Academy Phoenix and at Phoenix Modern. The first is, how might you at the beginning of the day simply inspire them or launch them into that day? So every great business starts with every day some intention for that day. Make it 5-10 minutes. Launch them, inspire them into that day. Maybe it's a question, maybe it's a video, maybe it's a quote. Second, set a SMART goal. What is their goal? What is the discrete goal that they want to accomplish for that day? Number 3, and then followed by practice on that goal. Number 3 is Tricia mentioned Socratic earlier. Lead Socratically. Simply ask questions. You don't have to be their teacher. Ask questions followed by another question. Let them investigate questions. Number 4, follow that with simply games, what we call quests. These are challenges that they face that are driven by interest and curiosity, things that don't have a right answer. They're simply challenges that they get to face. And it might even be playing Settlers of Catan. It might be playing Monopoly, a fun game that gets them to think and interact and build those skills. And then lastly, end the day with a simple reflection and a reset for the next day, right? How did the day go? What would you do differently tomorrow? Let's move on. So that's something if you're at home you could do. And certainly at Acton Academy Phoenix, the learners support each other on that journey, supported by a guide that mentors them along that path and equips them with the resources. And at Phoenix Modern, similarly, our guides support learners with the launch at the beginning of the day, equips them with the resources, much of which is self-guided, and then close the day with an opportunity to reflect and share those resources or share what they learned in that day with each other, and then start that sprint the next day. So if any of that resonated with you, you want to chat more, you can reach out to me at andrew@newlearningventures.org. And then Acton Academy Phoenix is Acton, that's ACTONPHX.org. And then Phoenix Modern is simply phoenixmodern.org.
Love it. Tricia?
So Big Idea Project, you can look at Big Idea Project and what we can do for your schools. So we're not just one school, we're a program that goes in and shifts the way teachers teach, the way classrooms, or the way the students learn. And you can find Big Idea Project at bigideaproject.org. I also have a separate initiative called the Generous Leadership Challenge. It was a pivot project when COVID came out to our kids who were in the process of leading social change projects. That's what Big Idea does, is kids are experiential learning, digging into some of the hardest issues around them, but identifying problems that, breaking them down to problems that they can solve, and then they go out and they do it. In the process, they change. And they were in the middle of that last semester. So we started this thing called the Generous Leadership Challenge, and we offer that free to the world. It's for families, it's for businesses. Many businesses have done it with their teams, for schools. So if you're a teacher and you're looking for a framework for a project-based experiential, learning, then go to generousleadership.org. And I also have a podcast, the Generous Leadership Podcast. And that one's more leadership based, but I do include, I will have a kid coming on soon who's an Ashoka Award. So I do include young leaders as well as CEOs and global leaders. So it's the Generous Leadership Podcast.
It's so good. Go listen to it. I was talking for an hour after listening to it this morning.
Thanks. Thank you.
And Jake and Josh?
Hit him, CEO. You're muted. Go ahead and hit him.
Classic Zoom. You couldn't get through one full Zoom session without someone being muted when they started. We almost made it. Jake, go ahead, man. Take it away. Close us out. You got it.
Y'all, our mission as a business is to solve the human excellence problem. And we feel like we're successfully doing that. We've been up and running for about 7 months. And like Josh said, we are getting close to breaking 500,000 users on our application. So I'll let Josh give you the really sexy reason why, but I'll say this: if you're interested in serving or saving kids and students, teachers as well, administrators, if you have a passion for change, hit us up and look us up. We are young, hungry guys that have really set out on a special mission here and have been blessed at the opportunity to bestow change. So yeah, hit us up. Our first core value is real people. Our second is heart-centered. So we're always looking to save and serve. And yeah, I've been really grateful for the time here tonight, Chrissy. It's always good talking with you. So Josh, why don't you hit him with your piece real quick?
Listen, Andrew gave us plenty of great stuff there. I don't have anything else except to say that, if you legitimately, if there's anyone out there watching this that you feel like, hey, we need a way to check in with our students that we're not going to be able to see in person, that's what we do. We do that and a little bit more. So call us, email us. Jake's dropped our emails in there. Literally, you can actually call us. The number on our website comes to Jake and I's phone. Like we said, first core value, real people. So if you want to get in touch with us, please do, and let us know how we can help, how we can serve you. And again, I'm just really grateful for this opportunity to talk and honestly to learn from everyone else on the panel as well. So thank you all.
Always learning. Thank you all again for being here, for being part of our Light the Way campaign, and for showing up as humans in this world who are lighting the way for others, peers, and our youth. I think it's equally important. And I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to make a space for your voices. I know those watching have been impacted, and I can't wait to see who else is impacted when we share this once it's recorded and posted online. So thank you all for being here, and yeah.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Let's keep this inspiration going. Let's take this energy and this drive and these discussions into our everyday lives and with our families, and start putting some of this stuff into motion. I think so many tips were shared. So thank you all, and we will be sharing this video shortly after it is recorded and posted.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.